This week's episode of World Beater Wrestling tends to the most common question that I get on the YouTube channel, and that is what to do when you can't access good quality training. More often than not, this question comes from people who just can't access training at all, geographically with where they live, or perhaps they can access some training, but the quality is just not quite there. And I completely understand anyone who's familiar with the Australian pro wrestling scene. If you look back 20 years ago, around about the time when I started training, that was very much the case. There were cities that didn't have training schools at all. Australia is a very spread out country, very hard to get from city to city without flying there. So a lot of people had to make their own opportunities. The first thing I will say, and I know that this is a very common answer that you've probably heard a million times and won't exactly help you, is that you may have to move cities. It just is what it is. If a training school doesn't exist within driving range, that's your only option. You either move there and train, or you stay where you are and don't train and don't ever become a pro wrestler. I do not mean to sound condescending at all, but trust me, as someone myself, 7 years ago, I completely moved my life from Adelaide to Perth, quit my job, quit my career, sold my house, sold all my belongings. I've done it before. I understand it's hard, it's not comfortable, but if there's a will, there's a way, and sometimes that's what you do have to do. If it's more in the realm of quality training, where maybe the school near you doesn't have quality, or maybe you can only access it for a certain number of days or times, and you're trying to work around that and progress through wrestling despite that limitation, then completely understand it, and I hope this video helps you a lot. I think one of the main ways to take control of your own learning when you do have those kinds of limitations is to just seek out as much education as you can. Online is a perfect way to do it, and for so many of you who have jumped onto the YouTube channel and dropped a comment, obviously you're already in that process. You're already jumping online, looking for different things, and that's fantastic. You can use those. Maybe your training school doesn't have quality trainers, doesn't have reputable trainers. Maybe the experience level is low, but you can do things like watch my channel, watch other people's channels, study wrestling, and apply some of those concepts that you see. If you aren't already on board, my worldbeaterwrestling.com Patreon gives you exactly that. Essentially, it's there for me to be your mentor. Depending on the membership tier that you're on, some tiers are all about me being your personal mentor one-on-one, and you get that time with me regularly where I can actually coach you and help you out. And other things are just to give you exclusive content, to give you little glimpses of training and principles and philosophies and stuff like that. So cheap plug ahoy, but check it out if you haven't already. That's the entire reason why I set it up, so people could access that despite where they lived and the kind of training they have available to them. But if you can take those little tips that you see around the place and set little micro goals for yourself, if you have a bit of freedom at training, whether it's a spot that you're running, or whether it's matches that you get to have, or maybe you're booked on a promotion, booked on a show. If you can set yourself little goals, like I'm gonna hit this technique that I saw on World Beater Wrestling. I'm gonna do this sell that I saw Shawn Michaels do in this match. Those little things can help you, and you can then gain feedback from more experienced people who are around you in the locker room. You can send your matches to more experienced people to get that feedback, or if you just don't have that option at all, give yourself feedback. Be analytical with everything you do, and I feel like you can progress yourself to some point beyond where you're at. The next thing I'll say is to maximize your time as best as possible, and one way to do that might be to travel elsewhere and train full-time for a block. So I know that a lot of schools do have like 3-month blocks or 1-month blocks where you train full-time at that school, and then they spit you out the other end. Places like Flatbacks in America with Sean Spears, and that's Lance Storm's school in Canada used to have a very similar process. But personally, I found that anytime where I was able to go overseas and train full-time every day, that is where I saw the most progress, and that progress stuck with me, and the lessons I learned, regardless of the quality. Sometimes I went places where the quality wasn't as good as my home training school, but just being immersed in that culture and being able to train with different people, learn different things, wrestle on different shows every single day was just a massive, massive boost for progress and confidence, and it was a way to get over a lot of plateaus that I was facing back home. And the final thing I'll say, and this will benefit everyone, but especially if you're someone who maybe doesn't have those options, maybe you don't have the money right now, maybe you're too young, maybe you've got other obligations in the way at this moment, take up submission grappling. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is something I promote often, amateur freestyle wrestling as well, judo, any of those grappling art forms, they supply you with so many of the fundamentals of pro wrestling. So one day when you do get that opportunity to maybe go and train full-time somewhere or go and drive to a school that's an hour or two away, or even move to a new city and train at a new promotion, you'll already have some of those foundations, and you'll probably find progress a lot quicker than if you hadn't done anything at all. When it comes down to it, you've just got to be realistic about everything. And if you don't have a place to train and a place to learn the craft, then things like online training and submission grappling are only going to get you so far. They're only going to give you some of the foundations of what you need to know before you ever step into a pro wrestling ring and have a match. So be honest about those things and just do whatever you can to pick up as much knowledge as you can. If you've got to take an uncomfortable step, then that's exactly what you've got to do. But as I always say, some of the hardest things we do in life give you the best rewards. If you're enjoying these videos and want to support me in making bigger and better content just like this, make sure you head over to my worldbeaterwrestling.com Patreon. It's a community for pro wrestlers, current and aspiring, a place of networking, collaboration, and exclusive learning content to help you on your pro wrestling journey.